So I'd like to welcome you to our first Global Expert Series, which is looking at showing initiative in a remote position, taking steps for success in a virtual internship. I am Jillian Low, the Director of University Partnerships for Virtual Internships, and I'm really excited to talk about initiative today. It might seem really simple, and some of the ideas that I review seem so obvious, but a lot of times it's what's not seen in an internship, and a lot of supervisors talk about the need for a proactive self-starter. And so it's really a great skill to kind of hone in, review, and refresh on every time you start a role to really make sure that you are taking the steps for success. So as any good presentation, starting with the topic, we do want to look at what is initiative. So initiative is taking meaningful action without being given the prompt to do so. It is the ability to be resourceful and work without always being told what to do, and it requires resilience and determination. In everyday life and in in-person interaction, you need initiative to get by and to stand out. In a remote internship or remote opportunity, you need even more initiative, as a lot of times your supervisor and you aren't on the same time zone. You're working at a distance, and it really takes you from sitting at a distance to reach out and say, hey, I'm here and I'm ready to work. Showing initiative really allows you to demonstrate that you can think for yourself and that you can take action when necessary. The ability to show initiative also shows that you have self-management, a really important professional skill that you can articulate in interviews, on your resume, and more. And finally, really just obviously, it shows your supervisor that you actually care about the work that you are doing and that you take your work seriously enough, that you won't just sit around wasting your time when you're done with whatever task they have assigned you, but actually taking the initiative and proactiveness to reach out and say, how can I help next? And if your supervisor doesn't have that, you can proactively think, what research needs to be done? What will need to be done to really get me to the next stage? So looking at a real basic example of initiative in the real world, say you and your 3 friends make plans to meet in the city for dinner on a Friday night, potentially 7 p.m. And you set a meeting point, but you don't really make a concrete plan of where you will go. Your first friend is prompt and arrives right on time, ready to go, as planned at the meeting point. Your second friend arrives on time, ready to go at the meeting point, but when asked where to go, they have a suggestion researched and ready to give. And your third friend really goes above and beyond. They arrive on time, ready to go as planned, but when asked where to go, they have 4 suggestions. And seeing as it was a Friday night and we didn't know if it was going to be busy or not, they made a reservation at one restaurant just in case. Now, I know in the real world, life doesn't always mirror the professional world. And maybe as friends, you really like the ambiguity or being laissez-faire and letting things happen as they come, or really having no plan. And that's wonderful on a Friday night. But in this example, it's really just to show that friend 1, 2, and 3 all did what they were asked and what you all agreed upon, right? They did the bare minimum and they did it well, right? They arrived on time. But your second friend really showed initiative by just taking one proactive step and knowing that, hey, they will need to know a restaurant, so why don't I have a suggestion? By having a suggestion also, the friend is more likely to get a restaurant that they wanted to go to, that they like, or that they're passionate about. So they're already a step ahead. The third friend went even further. So now they have suggestions to meet all of the needs of friends, but also Friday nights do get busy. And so now they actually have a backup plan and might be the hero of the night if everything else goes awry. Like I said, this is really simple, but it does show the difference between someone not taking initiative and just doing the bare minimum and someone going above and beyond. And this can readily translate into the professional world, where say you and your 3 colleagues are assigned a project, creating a feasibility study for opening a brick and mortar store for your currently only web-based company. To prepare, you schedule a meeting for the following day. Your first colleague is prompt and arrives to the meeting on time, and throughout the meeting they take notes and are part of the active dialogue. Your second colleague arrives to the meeting on time, but also has researched and brought along case studies of past online retailers who opened a brick and mortar. And your third colleague arrives on time and has also brought along a few case studies and examples. But during the meeting, they offered to start a collaborative document to begin collating the information. And after the meeting, they reach out to your supervisor, giving an update on the project and the next steps they plan to do. Once again, all three of these colleagues did exactly what they needed to do. And should they be asked, are you doing the job that you were told to do? They are all meeting that bare minimum. But your second colleague really took time to be proactive and be ready for the meeting so that they could really shine, show their knowledge, their resources, and be present. And the third went above and beyond. So they're now volunteering to do additional work and to additional support to be the leader of this project. They also did the research and proactively thought what will be needed in this meeting. And finally, they did a really great step of communication. They reached out and talked to the supervisor, just giving a brief update. Hey, you told us to do this, so we met today. We have a plan of action, and these are the next steps. Now your supervisor is in the know and really able to really kind of keep track of the project without having to reach out to you to figure out what's happening. So again, across the spectrum, it shows very little to initiative to a great amount of initiative, and how one colleague is going to stand out and the other might be left behind. So in both of these cases, whether you were picking a restaurant on a Friday night or standing out in a meeting or in a project, the colleague or friend really exhibited four big things. One, they were proactive. They really took steps prior to being asked to really deliver on different research, suggestions, and more. Two, they volunteered, right? I volunteer to collate the information. I volunteer to reach out to the supervisor. I volunteer to go ahead and make a reservation. They also thought outside the box, right? How can I really shine, right? I was asked to deliver this project, but how could I think outside the box and make sure I'm delivering communication on the side or collaborative opportunities? And it allowed them to show passion. If you can show passion, you naturally will talk about something a little more and show a little more initiative, but it will also allow you to potentially steer the work you're doing towards your passions as a result of your initiative. So if we look at in your internship and your remote internships precisely, what are four basic ways that you can show initiative? One is to research. If you don't know something, take the time and effort to research it and better understand it. Any supervisor or colleague will be really impressed if you go to them and say, hey, I need support with this project. I have done this research and I have this understanding, but I need you to unpack a little more of the details. Also, if you're ever sitting at work and you don't have a full project to do that day, or you're running out of work, there's also opportunities to do additional research so that you can then suggest things to your supervisor or suggest capabilities. Also, prepare. You want to always be thinking and staying ahead of your boss by predicting the needs they're going to ask before they're asked, right? So if you're thinking, this is the first project that my supervisor is given, you can always think, what will be the next one, or how would this project go bigger? So that by the end, when you're finishing it, you're not waiting for them to give you more work. You can also suggest it, saying, I can see that I finished this. How about I take on this project and really expand here to really make it more successful? That kind of initiative and proactiveness will really keep you one step ahead of your boss. Also, you really want to ask for more work. When you complete a task, don't just wait around for that new task. Don't always wait around for that supervisor to come to you. Reach out and ask for more. Do be aware that by asking for more, your supervisor might not be able to give it to you in the next 5 minutes or 30 minutes, but they will definitely know that you're ready, you have the appetite, and to really take time to provide that for you. And the final one is, don't limit yourself. Take all your tasks, no matter how small, seriously, and be willing to take that initiative and volunteer to take on small tasks. In one of my first jobs ever, while it was in person, the printer broke one day. It was going haywire, even though we had many different important documents to print. I am not a print technician. I was really there to support program management, but since we needed this happen and no one was taking the initiative to do so, I spent about an hour fixing the printer, really getting up to speed about it. It seemed simple, it seemed annoying, and it seemed tedious at the time. But then anytime there was this little niggling issue, I was able to support it. And those issues came from people like the CEO or the CFO. And I was able to network and actually get more name recognition because of that first initiative I took. Yes, it took a little bit of time out of my day, and like I said, it was a really tedious task. But since I didn't limit myself and I didn't look at this as a small or nuisance task, I was able to get in big with big names because I now controlled something very important to the company. When I'm talking about a virtual opportunity, this could be as basic as looking at an Excel sheet, seeing the mess of the Excel sheet, and offering to say, hey, do you want me to clean this data up for you a little bit? Yeah, data is tedious to work with and can get a little tiring, but by cleaning it up and really making it clear, you will now become an expert in Excel, which is a great skill to have and most companies want. But you also have shown the initiative and understanding that you can take that little task and then get more and more responsibilities and bigger tasks and really show yourself as a standout candidate. There's also other ways to show initiative at work, and that can be to network. So networking in a virtual opportunity can be really difficult. You don't have those natural passings in the elevators or at the lunchtime or coffee breaks. And so it really requires a lot of initiative on your end, and it can be one of the most challenging aspects of a virtual internship. And so we suggest that all virtual interns really take time to, one, introduce yourself to your colleagues. You might not get that introduction by your supervisor, and you might have to actually send out that email saying, hey, I realize I'm on your team. I just started last week. This is a little bit about me. Please let me know if you ever want to connect or if you need me to support. That initiative could get you on other projects, but also it just creates a great connection with a colleague that you might not have had otherwise. Always ask to sit in on meetings or workshops. Yes, this is a balance. I'm not asking you to join 40 meetings a week. And I know that some meetings can get boring, but by showing the initiative and taking the initiative to join a meeting, what you'll be doing is sitting in and listening on key concepts that are happening in the industry and in the company. You're going to be learning more about their project cycles, the language that they use, what they prioritize, and what really goes on in these meetings, giving you a better foundation and understanding of the company as a whole so that you can really succeed in the project or the individual aspect of your role better. Also, ask your supervisor to introduce you to other departments. Take that initiative to send an email after the first or second week to say, hey, I feel really comfortable, but I would love to know more about finance, or I would love to know about the HR team or the engineering team here. Could you potentially introduce me to a couple other staff so I can stay connected within the company? Most supervisors would be happy to do so, and this will really let you kind of reach out beyond and above, learning more career pathways and getting more connected to different projects. And finally, of course, stay in touch with colleagues after the initial intro. With a virtual opportunity, if you're not seeing them face to face, it might get really easy to introduce yourself that first or second week and then let it sit for 8 weeks. By not actively just reaching out every once in a while and say, hey, I'm still here, this is what I'm working on, how can I support? You might lose that connection. So it's really important to kind of stay on top of it and feel free to kind of engage in the different dialogues that are happening in your company to get that network and the best of your ability of the virtual internship. So with all of this, there is one of the things that you might be thinking as a virtual intern is, but can I do this? Is this too challenging? Are there roadblocks to being showing initiative? Would my supervisor actually like this? Is there a balance? And so what I'd like to draw your attention to is an interesting feedback. So Skills Survey works with the National Associations of Colleges and Employers, NACE, and in 2018 began to track career readiness in U.S. university students, completing a nationwide study with over 80 universities participating. Approximately 6,000 students serving as interns and student workers were reviewed as a part of the initial pool, with 12,000 evaluators giving their feedback on the students' performance and more. And if you look at these two big sentences, they show a lot about initiative. So overall, managers were likely to cite students as needing more experience and needing to be more proactive. And that's not really unsurprising. An internship is to really give you that gateway and that foundation of skills to get more experience and to be able to take that opportunity to the next job that you have or the next full-time experience. And so a lot of times it is a learning skill, and students really need to take the time to kind of walk before you run. But on the flip side, being proactive, you really need to show that you had that initiative, and it's a skill that was really needed. But conversely, coworkers often cited students as being too helpful or working too much. And so these two things kind of juxtapose against each other. How can you have a need to be proactive, but by being proactive, you're offering your help and your assistance, or you're going above and beyond and doing additional projects and working too much? And now we have two things pulling at each other: the need to be proactive, but also the need to not be too helpful, and to also limit yourself to making sure that you're not going above those 30 or 20 hours you've committed and getting overworked, right? And so there are challenges to showing initiative. The first, like I said, was that lack of experience. There might be barriers just because you're unable to do certain projects, or you might just not have the understanding of these key fundamental professionalisms to really deliver on all initiative aspects. And so lack of experience can mean that your supervisor might push back and say, hey, that's a great idea. I don't think this is the right fit right now, or I think you need to kind of start with this project first before you volunteer or show that proactiveness to do this project, right? These kind of stepping stones. Another barrier could be those supervisor barriers, where they just don't feel like you should really take the pathway that you're trying to initiate. And that can be really disconcerting. And so what I do suggest that is, if the barriers are really all from the supervisor, to reflect on, is it because of lack of experience, or is it really because maybe the supervisor doesn't have time to train me yet, but they'll train me in the future? And if these barriers keep happening, maybe potentially set up a call at the midpoint or end of the program to discuss what the barriers are, how they could overcome it, and what you need to do to succeed in the future. Another challenge of initiative is not knowing where to start. If you're getting asked all these different things, you might not know what to suggest, where to start, or how big or little you can show initiative. Conversely to that is stuck on the day-to-day, where initiative takes time, and sometimes the projects that you're initiating take additional time. And if you're already full on and working those 30 hours a week with full projects day to day, you might not have time to show additional initiative. And then the bigger ones can be confidence. You don't have the confidence to really reach out to your supervisor and suggest something. Or fear, which can be terrible as well, right? We don't want any students to kind of fear, what will the supervisor say if I suggest this? What if this is wrong? Where really all you have to lose is, if you suggest something basic, if they say no, reflect on why and then create a new plan. You really have nothing to lose, and so it shouldn't really stop you from that initiative. But you should seek a balance between offering help and knowing where to start, and understanding your experience and how often you're reaching out to your supervisor. But if you're worried about time, do remember that initiative doesn't always have to be a huge project. It can be quite brief. So for example, this is a real case, your supervisor reaches out to Slack noting that they really need to find that article you were discussing last week about the rise of cost of living in Tokyo. The first intern quickly and promptly responds, noting that the article was in New York Times. Quick and easy, go find it there. The second intern quickly and promptly responds, noting that the article was in the New York Times and that they will find the active link for the supervisor now. They've taken just 30 seconds extra to take the initiative and actually find the link, showing that they're of use to the supervisor and that they can really be of value. Taking a step further from intern 1 and really showing a standout. But intern 3 also quickly and promptly responds, noting that the article was in the New York Times. They actively find the link, and furthermore, they PDF the copy and save it to the shared drive just in case they need it for the future. Now the student is being proactive, they're volunteering information, and they're also thinking a step ahead. Maybe my supervisor, if they've already asked for this article twice, will need it a third time. And maybe that link won't be so readily found the more distance we get from the publish date. So how can I create access to that? How can I think 5 seconds, how can I spend 5 seconds now to save me time in the future and to be able to shine in the future? So do remember that initiative doesn't always have to go above and beyond that work hours that you've set. It doesn't have to be a huge project. It can be as little as just giving your supervisor what you need and showing that 1 5-second step of initiative. Once you're done with the internship, there are a couple ways that you can also show initiative. Or take initiative. So one could be asking for references. You can ask for your reference from your supervisor. We highly suggest to do this 1 or 2 weeks prior to you ending the internship. You can also connect with all your supervisors on LinkedIn and potentially ask for recommendations there, which can really be great when you're applying to future roles. You can also reach out and ask to complete informational interviews. Informational interviews are about 10 to 15 minutes long with different colleagues within your network that allow you to learn about their career path, what they're doing, and more, so that you can really understand more broadly your industry that you'd like to work in and how to get there. It also allows you to take that initiative and build that rapport so that you then have a person to reach out to should they maybe have a connection to a company you'd like to work for in the future. And of course, keep in touch with resources and ideas. After you enter your internship, potentially you might see an article or a published research document or something interesting that links back to your internship. Feel free to reach out back to your supervisor and say, hey, I saw this great article that I thought would be of interest of you. It really made me think of the project we were doing when I was interning. Hope all is well. Too often, interns kind of end their internship and then don't think how they can initiate future conversations. And so really keeping in touch with the resources and ideas is a great way to show your value and allow the company to really keep you in the forefront of their mind in case they ever have an opportunity to hire you or have a company in mind that could also hire you. And finally, initiative is really important. Companies are looking for it for interns, and they're looking for it in full-time employment. And so it might also be asked in an interview. So during an interview, you might want to prepare some behavioral questions that are really directed towards initiative. For example, give me an example of when your initiative and quick thinking stopped a problem escalating. Or tell me about a time when you spotted an opportunity to suggest a change. How did you put this forward and what was the outcome? And finally, when have you had to use your initiative to cope with a change in circumstances? All of these questions are open-ended behavioral questions that can be seen in an interview, and your best response is going to be STAR. So you're going to frame it in situation, task, action, and results. So you're going to name the situation, the task you had to do to complete that, to solve that situation, the actions you actually took, and the results that you got. And that will be really an easy way to frame it, but you'll also just have to think about what was the initiative that you took and why did you take it for the end results. So this brings me back to what is initiative. And the greatness of it is, like I said, it's a really simple concept, and it's nothing more than you already know and you probably want to do. Initiative is, like I said, is taking meaningful action without being prompted to do so. So always think about what can you do in your internship to stand out? How can you better support your supervisor and colleagues? And what can you do now for future success later? It can be little steps and going a little above beyond each day, or it can be taking on a bigger project outside of your remit to really kind of enhance your understanding and more. I do want to thank you so much. If you do have any questions, reach out to hello@virtualinternships.com and be on the lookout for the next invitation to our webinar in 2 weeks, which might feature a global expert or kind of hone in on another skill. I do appreciate you reviewing this webinar today, and I hope that you have a wonderful Wednesday.